Üdvözlet mindenkinek, és Salom! Valakinek kérdése van, javaslata vagy hozzászólása, megtalál minket ezeken az elérhetőségeken, és egyben lehetősége van mindenkinek arra, hogy amennyiben hasznosnak találja a munkánkat, hozzájáruljon ahhoz. Így még több emberhez el tud jutni az információ, és nem csak egy oldalú lesz ez a folyamat. Köszönet, hála és dicsőség Abba Yahuahnak.
Ephesians, 1st chapter. Shaul, a shalach of Mashiach Yahusha, by the will of Elohim, to the Kedushim who are in Ephesus, and are faithful in Mashiach Yahusha. Favor to you and peace from Elohim our Father, and the sovereign Yahusha Mashiach. Blessed be the Elohim and Father of our sovereign Yahusha Mashiach, who has blessed us in Mashiach with every spiritual blessing in the Shamaimli places, just as he chose us in Mashiach before the foundation of the world to be Kodesh and blameless before him in love. He destined us for adoption as his children through Yahusha Mashiach, according to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of his esteemed favor that he freely bestowed on us in the Beloved. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses, according to the riches of his favor that he lavished on us. With all wisdom and insight he has made known to us the mystery of his will, according to his good pleasure that he set forth in Mashiach as a plan for the fulfillment of time, to gather up all things in him, things in Shamaim, and things on Aretz. In Mashiach we have also obtained an inheritance, having been destined according to the promise of him who accomplishes all things according to his counsel and will, so that we, who were the first to set our hope on Mashiach, might live for the praise of his esteem. In him you also, when you had heard the word of truth, the good news of your salvation, and had believed in him, were marked with the seal of the promised Kodesh Ruach. This is the pledge of our inheritance toward redemption as Elohim's own people, to the praise of his esteem. I have heard of your faith in the sovereign Yahusha and your love toward all the Kedushim, and for this reason I do not cease to give thanks for you as I remember you in my prayers. I pray that the Elohim of our sovereign Yahusha Mashiach, the Father of esteem, may give you a ruach of wisdom and revelation as you come to know him, so that with the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, what are the riches of his esteemed inheritance among the Kedushim, and what is the immeasurable greatness of his power for us who believe, according to the working of his great power. Elohim put this power to work in Mashiach, when he raised him from the dead, and seated him at his right hand in the Shamaimli places, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion, and above every name that is named, not only in this age, but also in the age to come. And he has put all things under his feet, and has made him the head over all the things for the ecclesia, which is his body, and fulfillment of him who fills all in all. Ephesians, 2nd chapter. You were dead through the trespasses and sins in which you once lived, following the course of this world, following the ruler of the power of the air, the Ruach that is now at work among those who are disobedient. All of us once lived among them in the passions of our flesh, following the desires of flesh and senses, and we were by nature children of wrath, like everyone else. But Elohim, who is rich in mercy, out of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead through our trespasses, made us alive together with Mashiach. By favor you have been saved, and raised us up with him, and seated us with him in the Shamaimli places in Mashiach Yahusha, so that in the ages to come he might show the immeasurable riches of his favor in kindness toward us in Mashiach Yahushua. For by favor you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it is a gift of Elohim, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are what he has made us, created in Mashiach Yahushua for good works, which Elohim prepared beforehand to be our way of life. So then remember that at one time you, nations by birth, called the uncircumcision, by those who are called the circumcision, a physical circumcision made in the flesh by human hands, remember that you were at that time without Mashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without Elohim in the world. But now in Mashiach Yahushua, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Mashiach. For he is our peace. In his flesh he has made both groups into one, and has broken down the dividing wall, that is, the hostility between us. He has abolished the law with its commandments and ordinances, that he might create in himself one new humanity in place of the two, thus making peace, and might reconcile both groups to Elohim in one body through the stake, thus putting to death that hostility through it. So he came and proclaimed peace to you who were far off, and peace to those who were near. For through him both of us have access in one Ruach to the Father. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are citizens with the Kodeshim, and also members of the household of Elohim, built upon the foundations of the Shalachim, the Nebiim, with Mashiach Yahushua himself as the cornerstone. In him the whole structure is joined together and grows into a Kodesh house in the Sovereign, in whom you also are built together spiritually into a dwelling place for Elohim. Ephesians 3rd chapter. This is the reason that I, Shaul, am a prisoner for Mashiach Yahushua for the sake of you nations. For surely you have already heard of the commission of Elohim's favor that was given me for you, and how the mystery was made known to me by revelation, as I wrote above in a few words, a reading of which will enable you to perceive my understanding of the mystery of Mashiach. In former generations, this mystery was not made known to humankind, as it has now been revealed to his Kodesh Shalachim and Nebiim by the Ruach. That is, the nations have become fellow heirs, members of the same body, and sharers in the promise in Mashiach Yahushua through the good news. Of this good news I have become a servant according to the gift of Elohim's favor that was given me by the working of his power, although I am the very least of all the Kodeshim. This favor was given to me to bring to the nations the news of the boundless riches of Mashiach, and to make everyone see what is the plan of the mystery hidden for ages in Elohim, who created all things, so that through the ecclesia the wisdom of Elohim in its rich variety might now be known to the rulers and authorities in the Shamaimli places. This was in accordance with the eternal purpose that he has carried out in Mashiach Yahushua our Sovereign, in whom we have access to Elohim in boldness and confidence through faith in him. I pray therefore that you may not lose heart over my sufferings for you. They are your esteem. For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in Shemaim and on Aretz takes its name. I pray that according to the riches of his esteem, he may grant that you may be strengthened in your inner being with power through his Ruach, and that Mashiach may dwell in your hearts through faith, as you are being rooted and grounded in love. I pray that you may have the power to comprehend with all the Kedushim what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Mashiach that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with all the fullness of Elohim. Now to him who by the power at work within us is able to accomplish abundantly far more than all we can ask or imagine, to him be esteem in the Ecclesia and in Mashiach Yahushua to all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians 4th chapter. I therefore, the prisoner in the sovereign, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Ruach in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Ruach, just as you were called to the one hope of your calling, the one sovereign, one faith, one immersion, one Elohim and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all. But in each of us was given favor according to the measure of Mashiach's gift. Therefore it is said, when he ascended on high, he made captivity itself a captive. He gave gifts to his people. When it says he ascended, what does it mean but that he had also descended into the lower parts of Aretz? He who descended is the same one who ascended far above all the Shamaim, so that he might fill all things. The gifts he gave were that some would be Shalachim, some Nebiim, messengers of the good news, some pastors, some teachers, to equip the Kedushim for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Mashiach, until all of us come to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to maturity, to the measure of the full stature of Mashiach. We must no longer be children, tossed to and fro and blown about by every wind of doctrine, by people's trickery, by their craftiness in deceitful scheming. But speaking the truth in love, we must grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Mashiach, from whom the whole body joined and knit together by every ligament with which it is equipped, as each part is working properly, promotes the body's growth in building itself up in love. Now this I affirm and insist on in the sovereign. You must no longer live as the nations live, in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of Elohim because of their ignorance and hardness of heart. They have lost all sensitivity and have abandoned themselves to licentiousness, greedy practice every kind of impurity. That is not the way you learned Mashiach. For surely you have heard about him and were taught in him as truth is in Yahushua. You were taught to put away your former way of life, your old self, corrupt and deluded by its lust, and to be renewed in the ruach of your mind, and to clothe yourself with the new self, created according to the likeness of Elohim, in true righteousness and kodeshah. So then, putting away falsehood, let all of us speak the truth to our neighbors, for we are members of one another. Angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and do not make room for the devil. Thieves must give up stealing, rather let them labor and work honestly with their own hands, so as to have something to share with the needy. Let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building up as there is need, so that your words may give favor to those who hear. And do not grieve Ruach HaKodesh of Elohim, with which you were marked with a seal for the day of redemption. Put away from you all bitterness and wrath and anger and wrangling and slander, together with all malice, and be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as Elohim in Mashiach has forgiven you. Ephesians 5th chapter. Therefore be imitators of Elohim as beloved children, and live in love as Mashiach loved us, and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to Elohim. But fornication and impurity of any kind, or greed, must not even be mentioned among you, as is proper among Kodoshim. Entirely out of place is obscene, silly, and vulgar talk, but instead let there be thanksgiving. Be sure of this, that no fornicator or impure person, or one who is greedy, that is an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Mashiach and of Elohim. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of Elohim comes on those who are disobedient. Therefore do not be associated with them. For once you were darkness, but now in the Sovereign you are light. Live as children of light, for the fruit of the light is found in all that is good and right and true. Try to find out what is pleasing to the Sovereign. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to mention what such people do secretly. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, for everything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, Sleeper, awake, rise from the dead, and Mashiach will shine on you. Be careful then how you live, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of the time, because the days are evil. So do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Sovereign is. Do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Ruach, as you sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs among yourselves, singing and making melody to the Sovereign in your hearts, giving thanks to Elohim the Father at all times and for everything in the name of our Sovereign, Yahushua Mashiach. Be subject to one another out of reverence for Mashiach. Wives, be subject to your husbands as you are to the Sovereign. For the husband is the head of the wife, just as Mashiach is the head of the Ecclesia, the body of which he is the Savior. Just as the Ecclesia is subject to Mashiach, so also wives ought to be in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives, just as Mashiach loved the Ecclesia, and gave himself up for her, in order to make her Kodesh by cleansing her with the washing of water by the word, so as to present the Ecclesia to himself in splendor, without a spot or wrinkle or anything of the kind, yes, so that she may be Kodesh and without blemish. In the same way husbands should love their wives, as they do their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hates his own body, but he nourishes and tenderly cares for it, just as Mashiach does for the Ecclesia, because we are members of his body. For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a great mystery, and I am applying it to Mashiach and the Ecclesia. Each of you, however, should love his wife as himself, and the wife should respect her husband. Ephesians 6th chapter. Children, obey your parents in the Sovereign, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, this is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may be well with you, and you may live long on Eretz. And fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Sovereign. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling, in singleness of heart, as you obey Mashiach, not only while being watched and in order to please them, but as slaves of Mashiach, doing the will of Elohim from the heart. Render service with enthusiasm, as to the sovereign and not to men and women, knowing that whatever good we do, we will receive the same again from the sovereign, whether we are slaves or free. And masters, do the same to them. Stop threatening them, for you know that both of you have the same master in Shemaim, and with him there is no partiality. Finally, be strong in the sovereign and in the strength of his power. Put on the whole armor of Elohim, so that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the Shamaimli places. Therefore take up the whole armor of Elohim, so that you may be able to withstand on the evil day, having done everything to stand firm. Stand therefore, and fasten the belt of truth around your waist, and put on the breastplate of righteousness. As shoes for your feet, put on whatever will make you ready to proclaim the good news of peace. With all of these, take the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Ruach, which is the word of Elohim. Pray in the Ruach at all times in every prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert and always persevere in supplication for all the Kodeshim. Pray also for me, so that when I speak, a message may be given to me to make known with boldness the mystery of the good news, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it boldly, as I must speak, so that you also may know how I am and what I am doing. Tychicus will tell you everything. He is a dear brother and faithful minister of the Sovereign. I am sending him to you for this very purpose, to let you know how we are and to encourage your hearts. Peace be to the whole community, and love with faith from Elohim the Father and the Sovereign Yahushua Mashiach. Favor be with all who have an undying love for our Sovereign Yahushua Mashiach.
Valakinek kérdése van, javaslata vagy hozzászólása, megtalál minket ezeken az elérhetőségeken, és egyben lehetősége van mindenkinek arra, hogy amennyiben hasznosnak találja a munkánkat, hozzájáruljon ahhoz. Így még több emberhez el tud jutni az információ, és nem csak egy oldalú lesz ez a folyamat. Köszönet, hála és dicsőség Abba Yahuának, halleluja és salom!